What kind of insurance do you need for an assisted living facility? Let's find out. Good morning. This is Carl Cuesta with Assisted Living Facility Rookie. I have a special guest here today. Can you introduce yourself to us?
Hi, I'm Lori Conway. I have an independent insurance agency, Lori Conway Insurance. My background is insurance for over 20 years, and our agency focuses on working with senior living and especially assisted living. And we do work a lot, with all different sizes, ranges of facilities, and we are very lucky, that we've really been fortunate to work with quite a number of these facilities, and knowing not only just the insurance coverage that's needed is important. But it can be a difficult marketplace. So knowing how to secure that coverage, that's really kind of our focus and where we can kind of really come in and help some of the facilities.
In terms of insurance, let's say, for example, I am a brand new facility, like meaning I'm still trying to get it licensed. Would
Mhm.
my insurance be different from someone that's already established and just taking over a facility? Would it be two different things or would it be the same thing? Or
No, you really need the same type of coverage because you've got the same exposure, if you will. You're
Mhm.
still, working with residents, elderly residents, and I'm glad you brought up being licensed because that is very important. A lot of companies don't want to insure a facility that's not licensed. Now, within Texas, there are certain guidelines, for number of residents that you can work with. So we do have some markets that will consider those. And then there are a lot of them that know, okay, as long as you're in the process of getting licensed and you can show, yes, we're working on it. They'll offer the coverage, but yeah, you definitely need the typical program that addresses your liability exposures, your property exposures, and it's very, very important for all facilities, even the smaller ones, to realize that, yeah, maybe it looks like a house when you drive by, but it's a business. So homeowners policy is not at all the appropriate coverage. And I do have a lot of people that have come to me, once their company finds out that they're actually a business and they're either getting canceled or a claim's been denied. So,
that's really important. Like, I can definitely see how you fit into this assisted living facility puzzle. You're the insurance side. So what would be like, let's say for me, let's just take my case, for example. I'm taking over a facility, a 13-bed facility, and I approach you. What would be some things that you need from me? Like what kind of documents would you expect me to give you and things like that?
oh, great question. Thank you. So the process, these coverages are not going to be the same kind of coverage if you were, say, something like a flower shop. It's not going to be something an agent can just turn around to their desk and type in a few numbers and give you a quote and bind it.
Mhm.
The process typically, there's an application involved. And along with that completed application, you would need either your resident agreement is typically one of the things that is asked for. And the companies do a fair amount of underwriting. So they want to see that someone has experience operating a similar facility.
Mhm.
At least somebody on the team. And, in some cases we see maybe an existing management staying on, or, there's a variety of things. So sometimes it's the resumes of several different people that are involved in operations. You want to provide, a good comfort level to that company, that you didn't just wake up that morning and go out and decide to open an assisted living facility. They want to see some background in that, just as they do for any other business. And then, of course, licensing, if you've started the process, if you've had any HHS inspections,
Mhm.
those sorts of things are what they want to see.
So regarding the HHS inspections, we can wait till after that. So again, just to kind of refresh our memory, like the HHS inspection, it's what's done before we can take residents into the building, correct?
Right.
Um,
Well, there's a couple of different ones. There's the life safety.
I'm sorry, that one.
And again, not the HHS guideline expert, but the life safety, is done before you have residents. But then they don't do the health code until you have at least one resident. So it is kind of that catch-22 right there in a way. And that's one of the things that, kind of working with a lot of facilities, then say an underwriter says, well, we need a copy of that. And then I have to come back and say, well, they can't do it until they have a resident. So it is that kind of a little gray area right there. There's a little bit of back and forth on that process.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Now, regarding the rates for insurance, does it matter? Like, is it based on the size of like the number of residents, or is it just like a standard? Like, if you want coverage for, let's say, two residents versus like 20, does that matter?
So most of the companies rate on the number of licensed beds.
License beds.
Now, yes, and so there are some, and this is where sometimes underwriters might have a little bit of leeway. Some of them don't. If it doesn't matter if you're applying for 16 bed facility, but you're only operating with the 3 residents. Well, they anticipate that somewhere along that policy term, you're going to have more than 3. So sometimes they do go ahead and rate on that full licensed.
Mhm.
Sometimes they can kind of maybe have a little bit of a blended rate, but that's kind of one of the things that varies with what authority a particular underwriter might have. So, that is, unfortunately, that is one of the difficulties when you're starting out and you're only operating with a few residents. Your liability side of things, they are going to charge mostly on the number of licensed beds. And there are a few different other variables, depending on the particular characteristics of a facility that go into those rates.
In in terms of like what's it called? The title. So this what I would need is called a liability insurance. Is that what it's called? A liability insurance?
Right. You would want, so for an assisted living facility,
Hmm.
you have a couple of different exposures, overall catchphrases, if you will. You have both a professional liability exposure
Mhm.
and a general liability exposure. And a lot of times I hear people say, well, I'm not a doctor, I don't need professional. But, because sometimes it's also called medical malpractice, med mal, but it's also referred to as errors and omissions.
Mhm.
So under professional, that would address things like, well, maybe you were supposed to give medication, but you forgot. So
Ah.
that kind of thing. Whereas it's not necessarily something tangible and physical, like whereas more on the general liability side, say you're helping somebody transfer and you drop them, then so it's very important because there is a real overlap in what would be considered professional and what would be considered general. So it's very important to have them on the same policy. And most of the programs that are set up, for this, exposure, they're going to have them on the same policy. But that's also why it's important to work with an agent that knows, what all's required. So
Mhm.
what your exposures are.
That's excellent. Yeah, because I've always wondered, like, what exactly is insurance called? What is it exactly I'm looking for? So,
Right, right.
like, I'm lucky that I'm taking over one, so I can kind of like see and all this other stuff.
Hmm.
But that brings up a question. I may need to ask them, like, hey, is my rate gonna go up since I'm a brand new operator and the 10-year-old one is leaving? Like,
Right, right. And yeah, since um, it's a change.
yeah, it's a change.
So yeah, it could. And then of course, there's other coverages. There's the commercial property, workers' compensation. Because remember, you're if a worker's injured, it's not picked up by your general liability policy. You got to have workers' comp for anything that might happen to one of your residents. Then there's some other coverages that you want to consider, like employment practices. That kind of addresses some of the hiring and firing kind of scenarios. But I will say a lot of those policies have kind of a high deductible. But that is the kind of thing that you need to be aware of. That there's no coverage for that kind of thing under a liability policy.
Hmm. In terms of like price range for these policies, like, are you able to give like a just like, well, how would I know something is a fair price? Like, what's the range I should be looking for?
There's a lot of different variables. So a lot of times what I can do is find out some of the specific characteristics and kind of work with an individual facility and maybe talk about some budgetary estimates. It just because of the way these policies function, and just because of the rating and sometimes characteristics of the facility come into play. So it's really kind of difficult. But I'm always happy to look at someone's policy, and just and maybe it is a great rate, but maybe not. So always happy to kind of provide some insight to people on that.
That's good. Like, that's a lot of information. That's really good. Yeah, I'm just like,
When it comes to property, there's even more variables on those rates too. So
I have a guest
they
here.
all have. Yeah. Hey, there's that little one.
So, like, so you said how long have you been in the business, and like what made, like, a lot of people recommend you, Miss Lori. So that I was,
Thank you.
how did you get in touch with these people? Like, how did you first start getting into assisted living facilities?
Well, I've been in insurance. I don't know if I mentioned this before. Over 20 years.
Uh,
But then, as far as working with the assisted living facilities, that came about. I had a friend that had a small facility, and she mentioned having such a difficult time
mhm.
getting coverage. Like for her, it was more on the liability side, and so I was able to place her coverage fairly easily. I think the agent that they had worked with before just wasn't familiar with some of the different markets. I think one thing that helps me. So I started out kind of on the same side of the industry that I'm on now, with an independent agency, so working directly with the insureds. And then I went to working on the other side, kind of the underwriting side. And then that just seemed more like, I missed working directly with the insureds. So I went back to that side, but I think that helps me be more able to maybe secure quotes and such. I know what underwriters are looking for. So sometimes if you can head off some of those questions and come in with a good application process ahead of time, it helps. But just no, I realized that so often these facilities were having a difficult time securing coverage, and then about the same time, just the connection with the smaller facilities, and having someone like a lot of people in this industry, you have something happen on kind of the personal side that makes you see just how important this side of it is. You want to have that, want to support that, more of a, not necessarily boutique, but the smaller model, because you see how some of those big facilities just, yeah, the care is not fabulous. So that's kind of what really led me to really want to make some of these connections.
I I like that. Sorry, this she's a jealous.
Ah,
But like that's what I was looking for as well, because I feel like, with these sorry, definitely with these like bigger facilities, the coverage is so different. And I'm finding some people, like my insurance that I'm with now for my house, yeah, they deal with big companies, but they didn't really know how to deal with someone like me, with like
yeah.
a smaller, like 13 bed kind of level. And I
Hmm.
had to explain a couple of different things. And I was like, oh, let me just see what else. Maybe someone that's familiar with my situation can help me better.
Right, right. Yeah, a lot of agents you might know. There's some big names out there, but oh well, they're going to have a $25,000 minimum premium, and that's not quite within the budget of most of our facilities. So
Let me just pause for a sec here. Zoom. Okay. So another question I'd like to ask is, what is a common challenge that you face, and is there a solution for it? Or can we be one of your solutions for it?
as far as one of the challenges sometimes working with assisted livings, just knowing that how busy some of the owners are, and they're wearing multiple hats, and just because sometimes this side of it is a little bit of a process. I know it's very difficult for them to have the time to go through an application. So what we typically do is, like on the liability side, of course, it is typically a multiple page application. So we usually want to sit down, by Zoom or just over the phone and complete it together.
Oh, wow.
Because I know that if when you just send that application out there, then it's just going to sit in somebody's inbox, and so we do try to help the process that way. And I because and a lot of the questions just, unless because these applications are frequently for a variety of settings, so not geared towards some of the smaller ones. So just working through that part of it together really helps, and we do our best to. Obviously, we're not going to educate someone to the extent that they could get their insurance license, but we do try to highlight some of the things with these quotes and such to be aware of. We don't want to just throw a quote out there and go, here,
Mhm.
give us your money. So we do try to do a separate summary of what all's being presented. So and give some insight on that. And one of the things, that's really important that we try to highlight are, some of the things that might not be covered, um, or that have different limits, or some of the deductibles um, are high, especially on the property side when it comes to like a wind hail deductible.
Mhm.
It's just a percent. Well, we like to translate that percent into what that would look like if you had a wind hail claim. So often, I mean, it's not going to change the amount, but it makes it a lot easier to deal with if you know ahead of time, oh, my deductible could be $20,000 versus, oh, I'm going to go ahead and turn in a claim, and then realizing that that's what it is. And it may not be that much, but
Yeah.
we always try to point that sort of thing out.
I'm glad that you do point that out because that would be a deal breaker.
And that's, yeah, a lot of times I know I've seen things that's like, well, that's a great price, but what's that coverage?
Mhm.
So, and a lot of times it's not much coverage.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's the scary part. Yeah. You're
yeah,
paying for something, but it's really yes, but it's gonna cost you to use it.
right, right.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, and sometimes we can't change the terms. They
Mhm.
are what they are. So we do try to educate people so that they can be a little more prepared.
I definitely like that. Like for me in applications, sometimes I don't know
Yeah,
what that means. So like
right.
I'm glad that you guys spend the time to walk it with me. I think that's what I really like, you know. That's
Well,
that's a
and
super plus.
thank you. On the liability side of thing, a lot of the questions are, people see them and they go, well, I'm already doing this for HHS. But that's exactly the point. It's on that application that might be what you're already required to do. But the companies want to see that confirmation from you, signed by you, that yes, this is what I'm doing. So,
Well, that's excellent, Miss Lori. This has been a great, like you're the second insurance agent I've ever talked to, but this one is definitely, I feel comfortable
well, thank you. Thank
with
you.
you. What is the best way to reach you?
Well, we're have the office phone, 979-206-2524. My cell, I'm like everybody else now, with the cell phone always. So sometimes that's easier, 979-966-2524.
Can I put
Or,
this in the show notes stuff? Are you okay with me sharing your personal?
oh, yes, yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for checking. But yeah, my cell number's all over the place. So, and then uh, Lconway at TWFG.com.
That's excellent, Miss Lori. Well, thank you so much. Do you have any kind of social media we can learn more about you as well?
I I don't do a huge amount on social media, but there are a few. There are a couple of YouTube videos I think out there where during different presentations and such, they're probably on there. So, but yeah, I don't have a designated YouTube channel or anything along those lines.
Okay. I'll definitely link. I'll look for those as
Okay.
and then I'll share this link to this one.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you, Miss Lori. It's been a pleasure, and we'll talk to you soon. Hopefully, a couple of our viewers reach out to you as well.